Welcome to the Golf Coach Podcast, Luke. How you doing, mate?
Fantastic, Toby. Thanks for having me on, mate.
Mate, you're looking well. You're looking really good, actually.
You
You're feeling well?
I am feeling well, mate. And funny enough, I had a little training session before this. So I was just making sure I do feel really good.
You're an animal. It's 8 a.m. here. Hey, all right, Luke. So I've got you on, right? So we obviously have the Golf Coach Podcast, and I use this as a place for people to learn from, to help better their game, improve their health and well-being. And you are a strength and conditioning coach, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And would I be right in saying that you work specifically with only athlete type of players, Luke? Is that right?
Yeah, majority. You know, if you look at my current and existing and even previous database, I'd say 80% of my clientele is of a higher athletic population. You know, whether that's golfers, whether that's volleyball, sprinters, footballers, you name it.
Why is that? What sent you down that road? You have a passion for working with the top end players, or top end athletes, I should say?
Yeah, I suppose, like, for me, I always wanted to train and coach higher level athletes, because I felt like, for me, there was a greater sense of that intrinsic motivation and really generally wanted to go to the next level. And maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I started investing in multiple courses, reading books, listening to podcasts, getting mentors who specialize in athletes. And then that was really the catalyst for me to grow a business and a brand which focused solely on athletic populations. You know, so it felt to me that all the education I was doing, I wanted to provide and grow the athlete in front of me and just use. And that was one of the big turning points back in 2015 for me.
I remember when you did kind of switch into that way. So I know you from the golf course, obviously, and you're an unbelievable player. I don't want to play you for cash ever. But so would you think that burning desire, Lukey, came from the fact that you came from a pretty high-end, I guess, background with your cricket and your golf? Do you think that kind of burning desire of wanting to push people in there?
I think so. I think to me, like, having spent enough years playing at a high first grade level with cricket and being around state players and Australian players occasionally, and then really transferring that cricket ability to the golf course, I feel like, to me, it was that work ethic, that mindset, that discipline, that, you know, wanting to take it to the next level. And I felt like that was how I could resonate a lot with some of the junior athletes, but also the more mature athletes. It just wasn't, oh, you're a strength and conditioning coach. No, it's more so that, oh, he understands what I'm going through from a training and work ethic, or some of the sacrifices I have to make, or, you know, the harder decisions I need to make in life. Like, he understands that. I think that was really where I wanted to devote my time and grow the athletic population in front of me. Yeah.
No, I you can definitely see that. And that's the beautiful thing about kind of both the industries we're in, right? You can choose which way you want to go, right? You can choose who you want to help and who you want to look after. And I think it's important that you kind of definitely stick to what you're passionate about, right?
Correct. 100%.
So, how is your golf going? What's your handicap these days?
Golf's good. Off +2 at the moment. So So it was actually quite a little cool story. Like, started playing more consistently post cricket off 8, and then within 18 months I got down to scratch, and then I've been off sort of scratch +2 for the last 2.5 years. And I think Bob Rotella really changed the mindset of the game for me, and he was he made me think differently about my practice routines, as well as just the mindset around golf.
Well, that was my next question. What about what took you from 8 to a +2 golfer in terms of, like, I guess it's a lot, but what did you specifically change? Just your workload, or what did you do?
A few things. So I think there was one is obviously getting a coach. I think it helped. I was a cricketer, so hand-eye, bat and ball was my sort of sports. I was focused predominantly on being a ball striker, but when I read a section of Bob Rotella's, he said, if you look at all your strokes over the course of a round, 75 to 80% will be inside 100 yards. So why am I going to the driving range twice a week and just hitting 7 irons and 6 irons as best I can, or flushing 8 irons, when most of my scoring abilities are going to be within that 80 meters or getting up and down? So I spent all my practice time on the putting green inside 80 meters, or just around the chipping green. And that's where I really started to see dividends in the handicap. That made perfect sense to me. So, but also then just then just changing your mindset of like, I always believed I wasn't a good putter. I was never good at putting and get on the greens. I didn't want to be on the greens. And then once I started to refine that mindset, you know, it started to believe that I could putt. I could be a better putter. And now I look forward to getting on the greens. But
that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting you say that, isn't it? And it's simple, isn't it? It doesn't need to be overly complicated. It got told to me a very long time ago, even before the Bryson effect. Just hit it 300 and then walk up to the 100 100-yard peg and just train your ass off from there.
Literally.
Hey, and tell me about that mindset, right, where you switch there in your putting to, you know, changing it to wanting to enjoy yourself being there. Tell me about how that reflects in the gym. Would that be the same for the person coming to the gym? Like, if someone's going there due to the fact of they feel like they have to go there and they're not enjoying it compared to the person who enjoys the process, how important is it to really enjoy it, you know, your strength and conditioning, like kind of workload?
Yeah, I find that one thing is like you got to have that reason that you really want to be there, you know, and I feel like some people find that just getting to the gym is a chore. I understand that. But other people really appreciate that if you can just make small incremental improvements week by week, and that consistency begins to bleed into I'm hitting the ball better, I'm getting around the course better, I'm not as tired, I'm not as fatigued. You find that continual sort of emphasis on training begins to improve, and you see it as a bigger picture rather than just an individualized training session. So I feel like long term, if you can really get the ball rolling and commit to going to the gym, doesn't matter what it is, even if it's just to get it for stretching or a little bit of foam rolling, by making those consistent sort of habits is where you'll really start to see the results long term. Yeah.
I heard a story once where someone, you know, trying to get someone into health and fitness, and someone said, this trainer said to this client, I just want you to go to the gym, check in and walk out. Like, that's all I want you to do. Yeah. Just do it. And the client did it for a week straight. And then they said, I want you just to walk for 5 minutes on the treadmill.
Literally.
And the client walks for 5 minutes on the treadmill, and then just kind of that slow increment kind of, like you say, stepping into it. Because I think a lot of people as well with their health journey probably feel like they're so far away that that end goal of where they think they need to be is just so distant and it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Mate, you're so true. You hit the nail on the head. It's like, I'm here now, but I want to get here. And this distance between the two is so great that it's almost creating anxiety for me to even get started, because I'm thinking too far ahead. But realistically, if you get from point A to point B, it's process driven. It's showing up. It's putting a tick in the box. It's repeatability. It's just doing those 1%ers. Then over time, okay, just signing into the gym was your first priority, and you've made that a habit. Now doing 10 sets of 5 squats at body weight is now a priority. And then all of a sudden that momentum builds and you start to feel better, you know?
Yeah. And you know what I think, before we kind of get into what your specialist in, we're just having a nice little chat here, but what I think, right, is what hurts us in that area is the same why a lot of people aren't practicing short game, right? Is because it's not marketed, it's not advertised, it's not sexy, right?
Yeah.
Is the short game. No one wants to chip and putt. Like, it's not like, oh my God, he's the best chipper, that guy. It's all about how far he hits it, right?
Correct.
But in regards to the gym, and when we see body transformation images or videos on social media, we're always seeing the length of time and how quick they did it.
Yeah.
You know, like Barry lost 60 kilos in X time. And you're like, wow, that seems great. It's like, you don't have to do that. You know, if you're starting this journey, you don't have to get to a scratch handicap by next year. You just, if you want to get there, try and really find a way to enjoy the journey, and the destination will come, right?
Yeah.
If you can find a way to enjoy your exercise, which I'm sure we'll get into, right, and enjoy the specific type of training, your goals will come. But if you don't enjoy that training, what do they say? They say the man who enjoys walking will get to the destination quicker than the man who enjoys the destination.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really valid point. And I think the social media is really hurting us in that way. It's just because it's putting a quick time on things, you know?
It is. And it's becoming difficult because everyone wants to be keeping up with the Joneses. Everyone wants to be a certain figure or a certain shape, or, it's creating just these, unrealistic sort of shapes or body figures that, realistically just aren't achievable. I know a lot of the time, and I think for most, it's like just getting yourself started and getting in there is the best way to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, no, I agree. Alrighty. Well, I know, you deal with a lot of top-end elite golfers, a lot of golf professionals and, budding young college players and all that business, especially through your online coaching as well. But let's talk about you look after James Grierson. He's a tour professional. Is that right?
Yeah. Sure do.
So I know he's coached Billy Watson, who you used to train as well, right?
Yes, that's right. And who's been a pretty significant role in my golf development as well.
Definitely. Well, he was your coach.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
He was he not? Yeah.
He was.
I saw you two partnering up there. It's like a last little love relationship.
That's
for a
right.
period of time.
That's right. Along with one of your former mates, Earl McGlynn from Manly. Yeah.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
So tell me about, let's just talk about, for instance, just this subject here. When a tour professional comes to you and they want to start their journey, I guess, to, improving their golf game through, I guess, injury prevention or what is it? What does that look like when a tour professional comes to you?
Yeah. So first thing that I've always done and will continue to do is a movement screen or an initial assessment. So basically, I use a combination of both TPI screening along with my own that I've developed over the last 13 years. So basically, that's the very first thing we do. And then from that, I then speak directly to the coach. So it could be yourself or Billy for whoever I'm working with. And then I get a better understanding of what it is that they see in their swing characteristic that needs work. And then from that, I can then ascertain their current strength levels or general abilities within the gym, because each obviously tour pro will be different relative to James has been training a long time and has got quite a good strength base, whereas someone that might be relatively new has basically never stepped foot in the gym but has got a great talent with the golf club. So, there's all individual, characteristics that we begin with, but that's the very first thing I'll do, the movement screen, contact the coach, and then get a better understanding of their strength and power levels. And then from there, I then begin to build the program and build the design of what's really necessary. So for some, it's like, okay, let's say John can't squat. I need to get your ability to squat, to hinge, to lunge, to push, pull, rotate, and brace. Okay, can you do those foundations correctly? From there, we then begin to build the foundation and grow the pyramid. So that's the very first thing that I do, along with getting a better idea for the tour pro. This is the instance of where their tournament schedules are. Where will they be on the road?
Yeah. And I guess as well, like you're developing a training program for them to train themselves as well. You're not just there with them all the time, right? That's
right. Exactly. So I'll put together the program, get a better idea of their practice routine, what works best for them, and then accordingly put together the session or the sessions per week or per month where they can train.
Yeah.
And then there's generally windows of time where we can create adaptation or growth or whatever it might be between their busy schedules, because I know once it kind of hits that October through to, March, April, they're flat out, they're on the road consistently, and there's not a lot of chasing of maximal strength development. It's more about refining and working on power and speed, and then touching on max strength where required across that travel schedule or the playing schedule.
More of like a kind of maintenance type of situation, isn't it, when on the road?
Yeah, exactly.
That mobility. So let's talk about a golf specific, I guess, type of training. I used to go to the gym a fair bit and you'd see you there, but I wasn't in my playing career this time. And another friend of mine, Adam Groom, was playing then. And I'd be sitting there on the bench trying to lift as much as I could, and clearly was not doing anything golf specific in my training at that period of time. And when I saw Groomy move around the room, he didn't have very, very heavy weights. It was very like a mobility type of work, exercises that he was doing. What is the perception around that? Is that basically on where you need to be? Because we see what's going on TV with, Bryson's obviously talking a lot about his type of training. I guess it is individualized, is it? what does a general type of golf, training session potentially look like?
Yeah. So in terms of the session itself, the very first thing we do is, your foam rolling, your activation, your mobility, any areas that we found through the screening process that need some dedicated time to. And, most of the time with your golfers, I find that the ankles and the hips and the thoracic spine are the big priorities for me. So they'll spend a large part of that time just working on the mobility through those areas. Then from there, what I like to do is basically use a system for the majority of the training year, but then take out different components of that. So what I mean by that is, for most, I want to increase their maximal strength base, because if you have very little strength base to work from, I know for a fact that your horsepower is not going to be there. Your engine is not going to be there. And why max strength is so important as well is, like, when you look at a golfer, most rounds that they're on their feet, they might walk for 10 kilometers. Now, if you have to do that for 5 rounds of a training week, you're walking 50 kilometers, but you're also on the practice range. So the amount of volume on the legs is so important, and it's a heavy load. So the first thing I do is heavy strength training. We want to build that up. Now, that's relative, obviously. So if you're new to the gym, heavy strength training is you learning the basics. But if it might be someone like James Grierson, I might be working off a heavier load of, say, 2 to 4 reps to make sure he's got that strength base. Now, then from there, I'll work into some power, and that might be med balls. That might be some jumps. That might be some cable work, or some explosive landmine presses working across that sort of frontal and transverse plane. And then after that, I might do what I call the resilience block, which is basically dedicated work, whether it's moderate to high rep, in terms of muscle mass development and adding mass where we need mass across the individual. So that might be the next part. And then the last part of the session might be dedicated core, trunk work, and some sort of accessory work, maybe calves or some biceps, or, just anything in that regard, because that's still nice to do as well.
That's interesting. Biceps. Tell me about ankles. You mentioned ankles at the start there, and the reason why I'm telling you that is sometimes I'll just, I classify myself as, I'm quite healthy. I'm into my health and fitness, and I love going to the gym, and I love eating nice foods. And sometimes I'll walk around and I kind of, on a rare occasion, I would say like half sprain my ankle. Like it just tells me, Toby, that I didn't like that, where I might bump it or whatnot like that. So I'm interested to hear about, you spoke about ankles at the start there. What does that type of look like? Is that jumping around type of training, or what does it look like?
Yeah, I suppose from like an ankle point of view, it's the ankle mobility as well as the calf strength, the soleus, and different other muscles that encompass the lower shank. But for me, it's got a lot to do with, okay, we know that, if you do a squat test and your ankles don't move and you do a knee to wall, we know there's a correlation between loss of posture and your downswing. So what I look for is then, okay, well, if it takes 0.75 roughly seconds to take the backswing, and then it's 0.25 roughly on the downswing, there's a lot of speed being generated on the downswing to apply that force into the ground. Now, if you don't have any ankle mobility, you can't really stabilize, you're going to lose your posture. So the tendency then is to see early extension happen, which is on stats, maybe 65% of your normal amateur will early extend. So for me, it's like, okay, well, if your ankles don't move, here's a correlation to what might occur in your swing. So I need to mobilize the ankles. I need to get a bit of lengthen the calves, and then create some strength around those little intrinsic foot muscles, because we know in a golf swing, there's going to be a lot of supination and pronation, especially on the downswing, especially on that left foot. So I'm looking at that as more of a global picture for your golfer,
That's interesting, because you do see a lot of pressure on that left ankle. Like if you watch, a lot of slow motion golf videos, people listening to this will see, particularly someone like a Jordan Spieth's lead ankle is completely loaded, right?
Correct.
It's under a lot of stress. So has he got, and everyone listening to this would know about that, how his left foot rolls through the hitting area.
Yeah.
Does he have a lot of stretched ligaments there? There's a lot of, I guess, mobility, flexibility in that ankle to be able to do that?
Yes, for sure. Like if I was to look at it, and it's normal to occur. Like if you watch any NBA players move, right, you'll see a lot of that supination and pronation in their foot. a lot of the time under duress, especially with those fast change of direction movements. Now, with a golf swing, we know it's in the same motion. So his body has acclimatized to the exact sequence that's going to occur on the downswing and allowed that to occur. So his nervous system has adapted to go, okay, this is what's actually going to happen. I'm okay with it because it's been repeated and it's done multiple times. That might not be the case if I was to try to replicate Jordan Spieth's swing as a new golfer. That's just going to cause concern, and injury is definitely going to happen. But
that's very specific to him, right? Someone a bit like a John Rahm. That's very interesting. Hey, and you mentioned their early extension in a form of training as well. For 65% of golfers through your studies, early extend. So what early extension is when, I guess, the space between the thighs and the lower abdomen, gets wider.
Yeah.
And that draws you in closer to the ball, because as your body gets taller, you have to get closer to the ball, which can present the hosel, can present numerous types of strike issues. And for me, it's fantastic to extend, but it just depends on when we want to extend, and obviously not want to be doing it too early in the downswing. So when you are working for someone who, say, early extends too early, I know it's a broad question because it's different to each subject. Where does it start? Where does it, you mentioned ankle mobility there.
Yeah.
But is there anything in the ground where they're pushing their forces around, or is there anything in the glutes or the hips?
Yeah, you hit it. Just hit it then. Yeah, the glutes, and that pelvic stability, and that anterior core control, So I've noticed all the time is that if you don't have the ability to accept force, producing force is not great. So for me, what that means is like being able to rotate from an anti-rotation, anti-extension pathway, like a Palloff press and, like just a basic plank with any variation. If you can't do that well and have ownership of those movements, when you're swinging a golf club and creating those velocities, you're going to be found out. And that's the byproduct of early extension. You're trying to create a new pattern to mask the instability or the lack of control that your body has. So for me, the glutes, it's, one of the famous remarks Tiger said is, I didn't play well today because I couldn't feel my glutes, and it's been a major contributor to golfers is developing glute strength, pelvic stability is a cornerstone for increased power production, so, and what we know is early extension, you lose power,
Well, you're unloading your lever, right?
Correct.
So that's very interesting that you say that. So an early extender, not only does it affect their form, but a lot of the time what you're telling us there is it's the body's inability to accept the load of the downswing, and it's early extending.
Yeah, that's one contributor, and if your ankles don't move, then you've got no stability from the ground up. So your body has to create a new way of hitting the golf ball, and that's going to be the early extend majority of the time. And especially with your longer clubs, like your mid and long irons, especially driver.
Yeah. And I agree. And I often will say to students when I'm teaching, a lot of the time is people take their backswing and they react in a certain way, right? Which is through an extension, or straight away to start their transition, they start pumping their pelvis towards the golf ball. For me, from a technical, aspect as a coach, I try to just tell people to be a little bit more patient, because when you take your backswing, there's a loading phase early on, but there's a little bit of an extension phase, as I call it. You do come up a little bit. And then when you start your downswing, and when you'll see on TV, you'll see the head lower, right? You'll see people flex. And when you get to left arm parallel back down in the downswing, you are somewhat still loading. You are now starting your loading phase of coming back into the ground.
Yeah.
So from there, I tell people to load patiently. You don't need to be loading fast. Load patiently to left arm parallel till you've got your structures, you've taken the load, and then we can jump and extend, right? And then we can start to use our powers. I feel a lot of the people start to react too quickly in that transition stage. And like you say, their body hasn't got time as well to potentially take that load, right?
Correct. And I mean, like in the same breath as well, you've always got somewhat of an outlier that can work with early extension, but may have that stability and control, but strength in order to achieve that. And a classic example on the PGA Tour is one of the world's best golfers in Tyrrell Hatton. Tyrrell Hatton is very well known as an early extender, but he can get away with it because of his strength and the way he's able to set the club and create that lag. But he's refined it so frequently over so many years of doing it that he understands his body and he can adapt on the go,
100%. Yeah, no, there is no doubt that there is outliers out there, and people can you do something multiple times over and over again. You're going to get pretty good at it no matter, how good your technique is. But, and I said it to everyone, every time I talk about statistics with my, and I'm explaining to my tour guys or to anyone, I'll always say 99% are tour pro, or whatever. I shouldn't say that blanketly, but I'll say, and there is outliers everywhere, everywhere in our sport for sure. And that's interesting. So tell me, so let's just say someone's listening to this podcast now, potentially one of my students or whatnot, and they've never been to the gym before.
Sure.
Could something like potentially hooking up a call with you and for you kind of helping them start their journey? Because I know for me, right, when I started my journey, and I want to talk about to you about PGA Tour players shortly. But when I started my fitness journey, I felt like I wasted so much time. I feel like when people go to the gym, like everyone is pretty quick to want to get a golf lesson to learn the technique. But when they go to the gym, they necessarily just think, if I lift this and move this and do this, I'm going to be okay. And I found, through my first years of my training, I might have had a nice chest. I might have had nice biceps. I might have been the first guy to rip my shirt off, but my lower back was still sore.
Exactly.
So I was going to the gym for years and I still had a lower back, just because I wasn't training properly, right? Or I wasn't doing the right exercises. How important, because there's so much we can do, right?
Correct.
How important is it for someone to get hooked up? And if someone was to call you, you would recommend that, obviously?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, the first thing that I do with anyone that comes through is I just get you to paint the picture for me. Like, what's your training age in the gym? What have you done? What are your basic movement foundations like? And you do an online pre-screen and it tells me more about you, your mobility, your flexibility, what your goals are. And I know for a fact that when someone first starts strength training, whatever it might be and however they choose to do it, you'll notice that there will be an increase in club head speed. And with an increase in club head speed, we know that we're going to gain more distance, we're going to get closer to the hole, and makes our approach shots easier or whatever. So for me, it's initially just overseeing what they can do, what they've done. And then from there, we get a better picture of their goals moving forward. And I provide that program for them, which they report back and send videos across. And we work interactively online to make sure they're getting the most out of it, whilst I keep them accountable to the numbers that they put through in the program.
Yeah, and I hate wasting time, but I've always, from when I first got, given some programs or whatnot, I still use them in today. Like in my daily routine, or, my routine obviously changes most days when I go to the gym, but there's still some of the exercises that I learned that are still, I guess, holding me instead today, because just like the golf swing, we've all got our DNA and our pattern issues that we've had, like Tiger Woods is working the same thing. His hips get too fast out in front of him. We see Tommy Fleetwood always using the swing plane thing. So I guess us as humans, we've probably always got the same deficiencies to a degree as well, right? In our body that are letting us down.
Yeah, guaranteed.
And do you see people regress in certain areas at times, like throughout the training? I guess it's not always just a gradual kind of rise.
Yeah, and that's the thing. One thing I suppose I've appreciated over years is that when someone is consistent with training and they do a program and then they plateau, that's what you want. You want someone to plateau, because then that says that you've adapted and there's no further need for this program. So we need to then create a new program or a new stimulus for the body to adapt to. So that's the thing, is initially when you start training, it's going to be very linear. You're just going to start seeing incremental gains every week with whatever it might be, load or density or work done. Then over time, you might adapt to that same program and then nothing changes. But that's perfect. That's what you want. You want to then get to that position where nothing is changing. Then we change it up. We change the stimulus, and your nervous system and your musculoskeletal system starts to see new changes. That's exactly what you want.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that. And I find sometimes in my training as well, I go, oh, hang on, I need to actually change the weight, or I'll go, oh, hang on, I actually just did 12. I'm supposed to be doing 8 of these types of reps. So what does your program, is it like an ongoing thing? What does it look like?
Yeah, so the online program is first up is minimum 3 programs for that first initial 12 weeks, which is normally broken down into 3-4 week blocks. And then from there, what I generally start to see is that people have recognized that things are working, things are changing, I'm improving, and if it's just solely based on golf, great. You're going to see some significant improvements in golf. But what I've also noticed is that you might be starting to feel better. You might have more energy at work. That lower back pain is starting to be removed. I'm not as fatigued or as tired in the afternoon, and I have more energy to play with kids. There's these little side adjuncts that come with, training consistently and feeling healthier. So I like to say, okay, 3 months, let's get the ball rolling. And then if you feel that, it's going well, let's keep going, and we'll go on a month by month process.
And that's the way I look at it today, right? Is if you're going to go to the gym and you're a golfer, why not get golf fit? It's going to be really good in your everyday life.
100%. 100%. Now let's dive into that. If you're golf fit, you're going to encompass, for me, mobility, predominantly ankle, hips, thoracic, spine, shoulder. You're going to have core strength, trunk strength. You're going to have general lower body, upper body strength. You're going to have a level of basic conditioning. You're going to be golf fit, but you're also going to be healthy. You're going to be stronger. You know what I mean? And as I say to a lot of the tour pros or anyone that I've ever worked with, any athlete, I like to say weak things break. It's a very simple analogy. Weak things break. Now, let's build up that sense of strength. Let's get you more injury resilient, and let's have you have the ability to get around a hilly golf course and not feel so fatigued, not have such a fantastic front nine, and then your back nine goes to the proverbial shit because you're just so fatigued and you can't keep up. Yeah. Like, let's get there, As
the Dalai Lama says, he says, you've got one vehicle in your life, you should look after it, right?
Correct.
That's your body. So you got me excited, man. Have a look at these programs after we finish. Hey, all right, I want to now just kind of shift gears a little bit and just talk about what's going on the PGA Tour, as a general, or, I guess, the big tours. Yeah. And when we were growing up, you always heard the stories that, Tiger Woods exploded onto the scene and he was an athlete. He was fast straight away. And and it was him and Vijay Singh were the only ones who were training in the gym. And one of the things that kind of, I guess, gets to me a little bit is that a lot of people are saying that, the ball's traveling so far because of the golf clubs and the gear. I go, hang on. When Tiger Woods burst onto the scene and was hitting drives 320 and going to the gym twice a day, with a steel shaft, you weren't blaming the club back then. No. Now every single player on the PGA Tour is somewhat as fit as Tiger was, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Is as fast as Tiger was, or maybe not, but potentially close.
Yeah.
And everyone's hitting the ball further. So not everyone's blaming the golf club. Everyone's blaming the golf club now. So I have a keen interest in the speed growth, and I'm a little bit not concerned, but it's an interesting subject area around what's going on with Bryson right now as well, because if this thing works, which I'm not too sure if it's going to work, it's difficult to tell now because of the tour he's playing on, but there's going to be a minimum distance you got to hit it.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like you have to hit it 300 or you're not going to make a check. So,
true.
Or 320. So tell me about these guys on the tour, and we see their training regime. Yeah, just talk to me about it. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, look, if you think one thing that's noticeable, let's say 20 years ago, relative to now. Well, there's two main things. If you go to any PGA Tour event and now Live Golf or European Tour event, whatever it might be, it would be extremely rare not to see some facility for training. There's a gym set up. There's a mobile caravan with a gym there. Do you know what I mean? It's rare, but 20 years ago, you might see only 2 people being in there. That's Tiger or maybe VJ to make it a priority, right? And then the other thing is, if you look at the body of a golfer 20 years ago versus a golfer now, let's take the average or the what we're seeing. 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of muscle mass. There wasn't a lot of robustness. It was a very slender looking kind of maybe Davis Love or, that sort of movement, Freddie Couples. Now you're looking 20 years. Now you've got your players where lower bodies are significant, upper bodies are significant. The player itself has gained more muscle mass, more strength, and moves into greater ranges of motion than ever before. Now we need to look at the top 10 players in the world. You've got your Rory, you've got your you've DeChambeau, you've got your Bryson, you've got the Brooks Koepka of the world, you've got your Dustin, who's massive as well. They're all big humans, but they've put mass in the right area because they know that length and the power game is so important now. And if you're not driving the ball, let's say the equivalent of average 270 to 290 meters, you basically don't really stand a chance on the tour. You know what I mean? And you might have the outlier, which is maybe an Abraham Answer, who's just got a phenomenal short game. But if that's not working one week, he's hitting 6 irons into par 4s where everyone else is hitting 8 irons. And your ability to score from a 6 iron versus 8 iron is far different. So, the biggest thing I think I said to you before this podcast when it came on is 2019 when we were at the Australian Open at the Australian.
Yeah.
I just commented on the lower bodies of all the golfers were significant. They were they just looked so powerful and so grounded, And that's one of the biggest things I've noticed is just the size of the lower bodies and the ability to apply force into the ground.
And do you think that ability to apply force into the ground? So we see people like Kyle Berkshire who jumps out of the ground.
Yeah.
But I guess as well, right, when you talk about the strength and the size of the lower body there, not only does it provide club head speed, but I guess it provides stability. And I use the term grounding a lot. Yeah. And your ability to stay in your posture and stay true to your technique because there's no weaknesses, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%. Because if you think about it, if you've got a weak lower body, you're basically going to have any stability on that downswing to apply force into the ground, and you're going to be throwing yourself off your feet. You're going to early extend. You might be casting, swaying, reverse, whatever. There's going to be different contributions of swing characteristics that are going to occur. But if you look at some of the abilities of the PGA Tour pros who are hitting at 300 meters plus, their lower bodies are grounding them. They have exceptional glutes to provide pelvic stability. They can apply force from the ground and be stable through impact when they're getting club head speeds of 120 miles an hour plus, but not just once, every time. And we've got to also remember is that the average PGA Tour pro that's top 20 in the world is never swinging 100% every time they pull driver. They're looking for consistency, so they're swinging at 85 to maybe 90%. So that's what we've got to factor in is they're not always tapping into the 100% range. They're tapping into 85 to 90% and still hitting at 300 meters.
Yeah. That's what used to frustrate me when I played because obviously I am not a very long hitter. And my friends could say cruise it down there, like just cruise at 300 yards and not have to put too much pressure on their technique or, have to go at it too hard. So their timing was good and they had a lot of speed. And when they needed to, they could jump on one, but it wasn't necessary. So for me to keep up with them, I had to be jumping on it quite hard all the time.
Yeah, true.
And then not only off the tee was when I got down there, and if I did jump on it and got up next to them, they're hitting an 8 iron, I'm hitting a 6 iron.
That's
or a
right.
5 iron. So I was even further back. But I guess there to talk about the lower body, right? Let's just say so they're doing some different types of training there. Like, are they doing heavy squats And then I see often stuff on the TPI that they're just jumping around. Like,
Yeah.
what type of training are they doing?
Yeah, so that's, I suppose, like, there's going to be a combination of both. You're going to have your heavy loads, which are going to be low velocity because it's inverse relationship. Then you've got your lighter loads at a higher velocity, and you're going to have a combination of both. So you might see on some of the Instagram stories of, say, maybe a Colin Morikawa or Justin Thomas. They might be doing some rotational box jumps, really potentiating that load into that hip, and then bang, firing it through into that really what we call very specific movement pattern that is similar to a golf swing. But then you've also got someone like a Rory McIlroy who loves squatting. So he might come in and do 2 to 4 reps at, say, 85 to 90% of his maximum 1RM, and that's his strength for the day, but that allows him to develop more power at those submaximal loads when he does train in that velocity spectrum. You know what I mean? Because he's got more horsepower. He's got more to draw from. He's got a bigger bucket. He's got a bigger base, whatever analogy you want to use. So each individual golfer will be different, and they will resonate to what they enjoy the most. Andrew Johnson, Beefy on tour, he loves doing clean pulls and rack deadlifts for his strength work. John Rahm loves doing trap bar deadlifts. Rory loves doing squats, but they're all going to resonate to what works best for them, what they enjoy the most, and what they find gets the best result for them. So there's not one exercise which will fit everyone. It's what works best for you. I've always been a massive advocate of the trap bar deadlift because you require less mobility. It's safer. There's less compression loads on the spine. And it's one of those bilateral movements where it's not very difficult to learn either. The squat encompasses your ankles, knees, hips, lower back. You've got to have a sense of mobility and stability under load. Whereas a trap bar, load up, don't have to move it as far, and you need less requirements of mobility. Perfect. If we want to then go to more single leg strength, well, let's go to a split squat variation, to gain that stability and muscle size.
So that when you say the trap bar, that's the one when you step inside it. So it's the bar
and your
that
arms
goes around you.
Correct. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I saw one of the videos that TPI put up on their website, on their Instagram, was when John Rahm, maybe 18 months ago, was world number 1. The next video that he put up was him doing a chain deadlift at about 160 kilos. And I was like, that's fantastic, because all John Rahm's power comes from his lower body, because he has very limited mobility through his thoracic spine and lats and his wrists. So he can only go so fast. So it's all lower body and a lot of power through there to generate the club head speed.
He's actually had a lot of he was born with that ankle, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah, Dave Phillips. That's why I was telling us about it at TPI. So
So
who's his coach?
I've actually got a video of Rory McIlroy talking about with a driver when he says he wants to hit one of. It's like he's doing a driving show or whatnot. So it looks like a group of people, and I'll have to find it on my phone somewhere and publish it again one day. But he says when he wants to hit it a little bit further, not too sure on the wording that he uses, but he says, I just use my legs a little bit more. And
that's right.
I remember going, wow, that's crazy. Where the recreational golfer, when they try to hit it further up, they're just going to swing harder with their arm. So
correct.
I want to talk to you about how important is it to, so we've spoken about lower body. I guess we've touched a little bit on core there. Talk to me about the arms in the golf swing as from a strength and mobility point of view. So when I look at the golf swing load, and obviously, I'm a big swing technique nerd, and I help a lot of coaches with coaching the swing technique, and I look at muscles when they're firing, when they're not firing. I would agree in the downswing that your tricep is one that gets used, I guess, in the extension side of things there. So when you're unloading that trail arm, tricep, that muscle there on the back of your trail arm, drawing upon there. What else is important? Is it forearms? Is it
lats?
Wrist?
Lats. Huge importance. So if you think about the lats, origin and insertion, let's just keep it simple, but the lat will come down into basically thoracolumbar fascia, which sits just basically glute, and it connects the glute. So for me, you've got this, if you take your backswing, you've got this basically lengthening on one lap and stability on the opposite glute, which is your right glute. And then as you come down, that lat is unloading and just being powered by the other side of the hip. into the glute. Okay. So basically, if you've got someone that has really tight lats and has no shoulder flexion capabilities, they're going to have to be really flat in their swing. They're going to obviously just draw from within. And for me, that's one of the glaring obvious mistakes you see a lot of amateurs make, is not creating mobility through that thoracic spine in being able to then dissociate the lower body and create that torque. And that's where a lot of the power comes from. So it'll be great to have a lower body that moves, but if your upper body is fixed and you can't go anywhere, they're going to be out of sequence and there's not going to be as much power, because each segment of that downswing is going to be broken. Or as you know, and as most of your golfers will know, that kinematic sequence is broken, So that for me is like understanding that the lats are such a massive contributor in the upper body when it comes to generating a lot of power. So if you go back to that subject of look at the PGA Tour pros now, if you look at some of the builds in their upper body as well, Rory has a big solid back. You've got Bryson, obviously, you've got Brooks, you've got everyone that has a really significant muscles in that upper body, and specifically the lats.
So to train the lats, I guess to a person who's not in the gym yet, that's just the side of your back, right? Kind of like
Correct.
The wings. If someone
the wings,
hanging the wings, right? So to strengthen that would be like chin-ups or hangs or a lat pull down.
Yes,
I guess.
Yes,
the lat
single
pull
arm
down bar there.
Correct, single arm dumbbell rows, that sort of thing. Seated row, they're going to be one of the really important movements.
So if they're weak, we should be specifically starting our training around strengthening them, or should we be looking at more mobility in that area, or fast, or is it under a load? How should we be training the lats?
Definitely strengthening them. So strengthening the lats through full range of motion, and then just making sure that you're taking ownership of each movement. So I like to say, if you can go in and you do some chin-ups and you can do 10 chin-ups, for example, make sure you contract at the very top and then fully lengthen at the bottom. So you're getting that full length of the muscle, but also owning ownership of each movement, and from there, once we get that basic general strength or movement of that muscle group, then you can start progressing into more speed-based work if required.
And that's the interesting thing, right? And I guess the more I've learned as I've gotten older, right, and simple is better, right? Like with the food, if I can't grow it, if I can't catch it, I'm trying not to eat it, right?
Yep.
And with my exercises, if I can do a squat, which I can do at home, and if I can jump on a bar and, strengthen up my upper back there, so through my lats there, my golf swing, is potentially going to improve, and my general health, right? It doesn't need to be the crazy things that we see these players doing, like you mentioned before about the med ball and jumping around and spinning and turning. I guess they've already outlaid a certain really good foundation. Is that what
Correct.
you would say?
Correct. You've nailed it on the head. So the foundation's there, and there's going to be a diminishing return on chasing more strength and there's going to be a risk versus reward. So that's where more specific movements associated with the golf swing become more beneficial. So a lot more of the super speed training, the rotational med ball work, the jumping variations, they become more specific because there is a diminishing return on chasing more strength and a risk associated with that. So, if Rory can squat 150 kilos, there is no point for him to chase 170 kilos. That 20 kilos really isn't going to do much more for him other than put him at a greater risk. So he will move further to how do I generate more clubhead speed? Now that my foundation of strength is grown, I'm going to provide and do things more specific to that. And how do I chase it? Well, that might be X, Y, Z, right? But for the majority, 90% of the foundations done savagely well will create a base of strength that you need to develop the golf swing.
Yeah. I agree with that. And so what you're telling us as well at the same time there is that, there's no point, there's a baseline, I guess, where you want to be with certain aspects and in your strength level, and then where you want to start to look at potentially how to train speed and be more explosive, right? So
correct.
Rory doing, like you said, there 2 to 3 to 4 reps of a heavy load is not very explosive training. It's just strength training. And
Correct.
then he might jump around somewhere else and do something that's going to help him generate speed and be fast and quick, right?
Correct, because he's got that base to work from, and it's about then rate of force development, because with strength or maximal strength, it's irrespective of time. But in the golf swing, we don't have a lot of time. We've got 1 second. So, you've got 1 second to produce that force. But if you don't have any force to produce in the first place, you're not going to be able to increase your club head speed. And you're not going to be able to control the moving object in your hand going at increasing speeds. And you're going to have no stability as you impact the ball. And then we know you're going to run out of endurance at the back end of your third, fourth round after you've had 40 kilometers on your legs.
Right. I agree. And so what we see when we see all these funky videos come out of Colin Morikawa training, Justin Thomas training, John Rahm doing some really funky types of exercises as well. I know he's a bit of a freak in the gym. Not that he looks like it, but he is.
Yeah.
These freakish type of stuff that we're saying that does look intimidating, you're telling me that the recreational golfer does not need to start there. They just need to go potentially starting a journey, squats, lats, to keep it simple.
Basics done well, basics done well. That's what they need to, that's what you need to appreciate. Like if you can't do a bodyweight squat well, you don't have the ability to then do a barbell squat with load. Does that make sense? Like you can't go from not being able to squat to then adding load at the furthest complexity. So learn the basics, get some volume done in learning how to squat, to hinge, to lunge, to do a proper push-up, do a proper chin-up, do the basics well. And then from there, you will grow and you will develop more club head speed. You'll have more stability, more control. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the problem that social media creates is like, well, if John Rahm's doing 160 kilo trap bar deadlift with chains, then that's what I need to be doing. And that's where I need to be. Well, no, John Rahm's been training in the gym for say 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Yeah. That is his priority lift. This is a movement he's done hundreds and even thousands of times. And this is what he needs right now. But not you. You're just starting. You haven't got a basis of a squat yet. Let's learn that. Let's learn how to stabilize on one leg with a lunge or a reverse split squat or whatever it might be,
And I guess what you're saying as well is that, like, when I was listening to you there about you get those basic fundamentals down pat and you run the risk of not getting injured as well, right? Because your ankles are learning on how to load. Yes. Your shoulders, everything's getting a little bit more mobility from doing chin-ups or lat pull-downs. Like it's all getting a little bit of strength in those certain areas. So you run the risk of having those stories of when someone, slips on a stair and does their ankle. You're actually building some strength there and hopefully some flexibility in certain areas before you start jumping around and doing crazy stuff that we see on the TV.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
All right, Luke, this has been a lot of fun, mate. Actually, I do have a couple more questions for you, actually, now come to think about it. If you were, what's your perfect four ball? Tell me about that, right? Tell me, who's your perfect four ball you want to play golf with? So 3 other people. Anyone you want. Non-golfers.
3 other people. Well, to be honest, number one, I'd love to play golf with Ricky Ponting. He shares the same birthday as me. He's December 19th. He's who I idolized as a young cricketer growing up with. So he would be someone I'd love to play golf with. And he's also a very good golfer. So Ricky Ponting would be number one. Number 2, I would love to play golf with. Ideal 4-ball. Who else would be someone that stands out? Wouldn't mind playing golf with Bob Hawke. I reckon that would be pretty funny. The whole XPM would be, that would be incredible. And who else would I like? I'd probably say maybe a comedian. Love Carl Barron. I reckon that would be hilarious 4-ball.
You know what? I've asked that question. I get reminded to ask that, right? Because you're supposed to ask that in every podcast.
Yep.
Every single person has told me a comedian.
No way. Well,
there's been I was about to say you're the first person to not have a comedian in your
Oh, no. Well, you think about it. If you're not playing well and you're 4 hours out there, you want to be laughing. You want to be having fun. And I can guarantee if I got Carl Barron there for 4 hours, I'm going to be in stitches. So
He's a funny bastard.
Funny boy.
I tell you what, you know what you said? You said you can guarantee. I was going to say, I'll guarantee I'm not playing well.
Yeah.
Hey, tell
100%.
me, what's going on with your golf? What's the plan with it? You want to just keep hanging around where you're playing? Or I know you recently, maybe a couple of years ago, you tried to qualify for a few big events. What do you want to do with it?
Yeah, so there's still a big goal for me. Is I want to play in the New South Wales the mid amateur, so being over 35, and ultimately I'd love to win that. I feel like if I'm playing off a +2 or +3 handicap, and I'm a chance, I'd love to suggest that if I'm playing well, I could play well and win that. That's a big goal for me. That's always been a big goal. But the biggest goal I've always wanted to achieve is playing the Australian Amateur. And I've been a little bit unlucky with the handicapping and how you get in. So I entered this year at +1.9 GA, and then the cut for that tournament got up to +2.4. 2.5. So, basically every golfer in the Australian Amateur is a +3 or better. And I didn't qualify again. So that's still a burning goal for me. So essentially I need to get the +3 to achieve that. And I just think for me, having played X amount of years at cricket, to go from an 8 handicapper and then playing the Australian Amateur is something that I've always wanted to achieve. So it's still a burning desire, and it's still there and thereabouts. So when it comes closer to the end of this year, once I'm back from Hawaii, I'll start practicing again and really get clearer on trying to achieve that goal this next year.
I tell you what, you'll be the strongest guy on the field.
Yeah.
The Australian Amateur it's full of obviously you win anyone who wins the Australian Amateur, you look at the trophy, it's an incredible list of people, right?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Mate, that's a good goal to have. It's good to have those goals. Do you think those goals are important for you?
They are important for me because everyone's got certain standards. Like for me, like a standard has always been I never want to play less than scratch, and for me that's just my own standard. I feel like I've worked hard enough over the years and invested so much time into golf and hitting balls and reading books, listening to podcasts, just developing everything I can about the game. I don't want to play worse than scratch. You know what I mean? So for me, that's my standard. And then another big goal keeps me focused is at the end of the day, if I'm 65, 70, 80 years of age, I can look back and go, you know what? I did play off +3 and I did play in the Australian Amateur. And that's pretty cool to me. So that is what keeps me going,
Yeah, no, it's I hear with you on that one as well. I when I have my goals, I guess in the gym for myself personally, from talking about in your profession, is that I look at it that when I'm in my 40s, I want to be the fittest. When I'm in my 50s, I want to be the fittest I am when I'm in my 50s, and that's the way I kind of see it. And I'm always surrounded by people at the golf club, and you see people who are injured or who are not moving well and they look a bit unwell, and, hanging around a lot of older people when I've been, as a young fella in the golf industry, you kind of learn from them, like, hang on, I don't want to be that injured and that sore when I'm that age. I want to be able to, my goal is that, when I look back, I want to be able to just say that I can run the golf course in my 50s or 60s. That's my kind of type of golf. All right, mate, look, this has been a lot of fun and I've learnt a lot.
Awesome.
I didn't get to the gym this morning because my youngest is not feeling 100%, and the time I go, if I wake up a few times during the night, I can't go. But I assure you, I'm going to be squatting. I'm going to be doing I have made it a promise of mine to. I do squat every session, and I do chin-ups. I try my very best to get as many as I can. I'm not as strong as I would like to be in that area. Yep. And it's a funny one. And the reason why, Luke, is when I first started to try and do them, I was like, hang on, I'm fit, I'm strong. Why can't I do a chin-up properly? I was like, I can't even lift myself up onto the bar. I was like, what's the point? If I'm getting chased by someone, I need to be able to save myself. So right. I want to be able to pull myself over a bar, that's kind of where my chin-up journey has started. And I'm getting pretty good at it now, to be honest, but that's fun. Now, tell me, we touched on your online coaching. I'm very intrigued by it because obviously I'm an online golf coach and, I do a lot of online coaching myself. And how can someone reach you?
Yep.
And you said you've just got the 3 types of different programs.
Yep.
And tell me the length of time it runs over, and is there different types of options? What does it look like?
Yeah, so basically you can reach me through my website, which is, edge-performance.com.au. And then once you go there, you can go into the online coaching, and then you can fill out a form and send through an inquiry. I get back to you, and then once I receive that, we have a call similar to this, face-to-face or via the phone. And then from there, we basically ascertain what it is that you want to achieve, your goals and moving forward, your strength goals, for example. From here, we then do 3 programs, and that basically builds the foundation. Whether you're new to the gym or you've been training for 10 years, we get very clear on what it is that you want to achieve. Videos are sent through. I get to examine your form. I get to give you feedback via WhatsApp. And then you basically make that decision after three phases, whether or not you want to continue or you're happy with where I've taken you to.
That's brilliant. And, I guess for a lot of people as well who might be intimidated to go to the gym or have a trainer or whatever, or, for me, it couldn't be more perfect, obviously, right? It's like you work with golfers, you work with top end elite athletes. I know you're extremely passionate in this. You're kind of like myself, where you're a career strength and conditioning coach. You're not just this guy that's walking around the gym and mopping down the lat pull down machine and cleaning it and telling you what to do because, they played golf, 3 years ago. You actually know what you're talking about. And for me, if I want to be fit and healthy, I may as well be golf fit, like we spoke about before, right?
True.
Hey, what about your Instagram page? That's where I learn all my stuff from. Your Instagram.
Yeah. Edge Performance is my Instagram page. Yeah, Edge Performance _. So that's my Instagram page, and that showcases various athletes I train and some golfers as well. So it's ever evolving, which I love.
Hey, for the Aussies out there, I see that you're often training a female Aussie cricket star. Is that right?
Yeah, Lisa Healy. Yeah, so I train her in the off season, probably Midge, as she's known as. She's phenomenal, and she's a phenomenal golfer too. Plays off 3 at Longreach where I play. Yeah, plays off 3. So it's a good conversation when we're training in her off season. There's a lot of talk revolving around golf between sets. So
she's a gun too. Is she?
She's a gun.
She looks strong. She's real strong. She's
very strong. I suppose for her sport, she needs to be strong. She has a lot of power through the legs, and then obviously she's a keeper, so she needs to have that base of endurance as well to go up and down in 1,000 squats per day. So
don't they? I watch cricket keepers and I often think about how much they're squatting because they are just in that squatter position all day long.
All day, yeah.
Hey, Edgy, thanks a lot for this, mate. I hope you enjoy your week, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Toby. It's been a pleasure. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, brother.